Okay, well, I finally started the second layout, the World War One casualty clearing station. I bought some 9mm hardwood ply, which is the same wood I used last time for the Thomas layout, and I've had it cut to size, but this time I measured my car first and it does fit in the back. Last time, if you remember, I had to hire a van to get it out. A bit embarrassing and also expensive. Okay, just like last time, I'm going to put some support underneath the board, stop it warping, make sure it feels nice and secure and that when things are glued onto it, they won't move about and come off. And I'm going to glue and screw that as I did before. Once that was dry, I decided to put some additional support underneath it because there was a bit of movement still, and then I add a bit of felt underneath because at the moment it sits on my dining table, although if I do take it as an exhibition layout or to some of the British Legion talks I do on the First World War, I will have a couple of trellises to sit it on, and I've already bought those ready to try out. This time I've decided that I will actually add cork to the whole of the board as a way of doing some noise reduction, and then I'll add some other cork underneath the track just to raise it, to give it a better and more authentic look. The cork's a bit expensive, but because of my board's 5 foot by 3 foot, you can actually buy 2 feet and 1 feet rolls, so it makes it nice and easy for me to buy those 3 pieces and then, as you've seen here, glue them down with PVA, and it was glued in no time. Just weighted down with some books and no problem at all. It looks pretty good and feels pretty good, and it should hopefully soak up some of the excess glues and whatever when I'm slapping it around to put the scenery on. Okay, I've got the OO track in place. It's very limited. I can really just run it from the what will be the fiddle yard in front of us, round through the archway, past the backboard and into the sidings for the hospital, the double sidings as the real hospital did have. That leaves me little room past the point, so the rolling stock has got to be pretty short. So as you can see on the test locomotive at the front, I've only got 2 of the ambulance train carriages. They're actually 16 IRL, so I'm going to have a pretty layout to do it as realistically and as historically accurate as I could do. But for the model railway, people will get the impression that there's ambulance train coming in to pick people up. I actually have 6 carriages, so it's a shame I can't use them really. I've also wired this up just some very basic controls just to see if it's running okay, and it is. So they both run forwards and back through the points, and I'll have some electric control on the far points, which will be on the public side if you like. However, I've never done that before. I haven't even wired or soldered in the power to the track, so that's all going to be new for me and something I'll be doing shortly. Alright, the track has now got another layer of cork underneath it to raise it to make it a bit more realistic, although I won't be using ballast. That's the fiddle yard side. And I've actually soldered the wires onto the track for the first time ever, and amazingly it works. So this is about where it will come into the view. I'm thinking about doing some sort of trench there. You know, all the mess in the background, boxes everywhere. And I've actually wired up my first point switch. So the brown wire will eventually go into the transformer. The green and the red wire go into 3 wires that come out the points motor. And then the other black wire is the second wire that goes to the transformer. And fortunately, the transformer I'm using for the 009 has the 12 volt, which will do my campfires and my braziers, and it's also got 16 volt, which does the point motors. So I'm happy. The trains are working, the locomotives and the carriages. Could only fit 2 of the ambulance trains because of the size. And now what I'm going to turn into the 40 men, 8 horses if I can. So the next thing is to take away all this crap and start laying that all again. Okay, well I'm trying out some 009 layouts, and I'm not really that happy with either, and that's just testing how close I can get to the 00 scale locomotives. Some Baldwin, which I absolutely love, and the medical car that goes behind it, and it's running quite nicely as a test. I just can't decide on the layout. I've tried those as sidings and I'm still not completely happy about that layout. So I'm trying out now with the fiddle yard which is about 22 centimeters, and that's kind of, I think, the look I'm going to go for long term. That's showing it with the backboard in place and the fiddle yard. Okay, so now I've got the track down, I'm able to make an approximate plan to show you of what this layout is going to look like. There'll be some changes between now and then, because there always are. But essentially in the foreground are the double sidings that go to the points, which is going to be electrically controlled through that point hut, and they'll take you round to the back and into the fiddle yard as if they're disappearing off to the main line. In front of that is the road. Now the road's an interesting one because from 17 something in Paris the French used tarmac as we did in this country. This is a country village, so unless it was strengthened by the army or by the Americans when they came just before they laid the narrow gauge, it's likely to be hardened gravel. So I want it to look like a tough road, but it actually won't be a grey tarmac road. It's going to be still probably mud coloured, but it's going to be a noticeable hard surface. That's what I need to have. And along that could be tanks, could be ambulances, trucks, armoured cars, cavalry, horse and carts, or troops just walking. So I want to have some traffic along there so people see something moving. The left side of the layout is an embankment, like a cutting, and then the railway lines for the narrow gauge will go around to the back, the fiddle yard. One of those two, the outer track, is a continuous loop, so I can have something for people to look at long term, and I'll have that as on a slow running. The inner track is the one that's got the three sidings, and that comes to a halt in the fiddle yard. There'll be two electric points, and if you look at those pictures I showed in the first video, there are lots of narrow gauges going right into the casualty clearing stations. And in fact, in a book I was reading recently, one of the nurses was saying that there's a narrow gauge train, the ammunition train, that actually went right through the middle of their hospital. So even though it wasn't bringing casualties every day, it would go through, so they ran the risk of being shelled. So the main area of the casualty clearing station is the left kind of third, and that's where there's going to be the tented area. If I can actually scratch build those tents, and then it will be the start of the Nissan huts. This casualty clearing station ordered 9 extra Nissan huts not long after they started there. At the back there, where you see it says raised hilly area, that's because there's the backdrop, or the backboard rather, is going to have like clouds and sky to it, so I need to have some depth of field. So there's going to be a little embankment, and on top of that I'll probably put some damaged trees, because the area was pretty much just mud everywhere, even though some ways further back there probably would have been some greenery and trees. But in this area, everybody describes it as the Germans ruined everything, so there would have been more flooding, and of course blew all the trees up. Then there are sidings, as you can see, which is pretty much all the casualty clearing stations had those to bring casualties in and supplies. The CCS buildings in the middle will probably be Nissan huts. And then they'll move over towards the ruin house and what's left of part of the village. And there's an old village road that I'll put in that as well, and where the church will be. I'm actually going to put where it says ruined houses above the church. That's going to be a bigger space now. And I'm going to be putting probably some more bell tents, which is going to be like a little camp area. I want to put little fires inside a couple of the houses, because they would have been occupied if there was any kind of shelter there whatsoever. And then some more troop tents as well. And then lastly, for something else to look at, I'm probably going to have a couple of Sopwith camels chasing a Fokker triplane or something like that above the layout, so there's something to look at. You remember from the first video I was talking about a crashed aircraft from an earlier time. I still may do that, because I've got a couple of photographs of crashed aircrafts, and sometimes they really just kind of skid into an embankment and tipped up. They weren't always smashed to pieces unless they're disintegrated very high up. And then lastly, the right hand side is another embankment, and there's actually room on there for me to create a bit of a trench. I was going to do it by the backboard, but it didn't make sense, because looking at this layout, the Germans were always to the east, so it makes sense for me to have the kind of easterly direction. some sort of trench, and there were actually trenches around there, so the former front line was not far from there, and reserve trenches for the British would just be on this casualty clearing station, albeit the front probably about 3 or 4 miles away. Okay, so that's pretty much my plan. I've just now got to go with it.